Welcome to the S.A.C.R.E.D Show.
Welcome to the S.A.C.R.E.D Show. I'd like to thank J23 for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. My guest today is Dr. Miriam Sekandi. Dr. Miriam is an educator, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of this book, It Takes a Village to Wreck a Child. Yes, you did not read that wrong. That is the name of the book, and we'll get into that in a little bit. She helps parents and workplace leaders break free from cultural conditioning and inherited trauma through her S.A.C.R.E.D Communication Method. We'll be talking about that a bit as well. Born in Uganda and now based here in Canada, not just a couple hours away from me, 3 hours up the highway from me. She's raised 4 children across continents and cultures. Her work began with a personal reckoning, realizing she was repeating the very patterns that wounded her. How many of us can relate to that, right? We'll get into that. And today she teaches others to lead with awareness, connection, and the courage to break generational cycles. Miriam, welcome to the S.A.C.R.E.D Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here. So just for the listener's sake, I participated on a panel with a friend of mine, colleague of mine, as a podcast host to have guests talk about, what they're up to, their books or their programs, whatever. And I heard Miriam, talk about, what she did and talked about the book. And I was like, no, I want her on the podcast because I think this is very important. So that's how we first connected. But Miriam, I'd love for you to, we'll get into, your work and the book. But maybe, just take us a step back and how you, a little bit about your backstory. You describe it very well in the book, but, high level for the audience about your backstory growing up in Uganda and what, brought you to, North America.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me. I've lived in Canada for the past 20 years. And prior to that, of course, I lived in Uganda. Now, I was born and raised in a fusion of both traditional Ugandan culture and the religious culture. So it was always a dance between the two. And it was not easy because the upbringing that a lot of people have experienced, and I did experience, where you had the adults in the community using disciplinary methods for anything and everything. How you sat, how you blinked, how you looked, where you faced, how you ate, everything. Every time as a child growing up, you felt picked on by the adults in the room. Whichever adults were there, it didn't have to be just your parents. Anybody and anyone who was around you kind of felt the need to be responsible for your upbringing. So personally, and I've talked to very many people who grew up in the same environment as me, and many of them have not really done the reflective work around it. But after I happened to do some reflective work when I came here, and certain things kind of started stirring inside of me, and I realized that what had been my normal growing up had a lot of icky things that had left negative deposits in my system. And I had to take on the job of getting rid of that, because I noticed that in my parenting, I was repeating the same cycles and I felt bad. Like if I would hit my child, I would feel bad. And I started asking myself, ooh, if it is supposed to be okay, why do I feel bad about it? And every time I saw my child sad or, really unhappy, and this was even before I came here, it got me thinking, why is my child sad? And then I realized also, after hurting, and then you're comforting the child. So you kind of send those double messages of, are you actually being, like, what are you as a parent? What are you meant to be? If you're causing hurt or harm, and then at the same time, you're the person nursing the child back to health. So it kind of creates a confusion in the child's nervous system and you're not a safe person. So I realized I was not being a safe person, a safe space for my kids to grow up, um, to grow up to their full potential if I was going to continue down that path. So I had to get on it and fix it and clean it up. Yeah.
Right. You bring an interesting point there, Miriam. I think a lot of people, what I experience in my own clients, I experience in my own family, right? From my, East Indian side of my family, where those, I'm just going to call it what it is, what I think it is, those, at the unconscious mind level, those traumas, those, you got yelled at or smacked or whatever, and then comforted, like you just said, and it's like this confusing. Now your body doesn't know, like, when is it safe? I don't know when it's ever safe. And I know you kind of talk a little bit about that throughout the book in your own story. And I really encourage everyone, grab the book. Like, Miriam's story is really, really interesting, for sure. Maybe let's start off our conversation, why do well-meaning, I think most parents, I think for the most part, 99.9% of parents are well-meaning, but why do they unknowingly pass down, emotional harm to their children? And, maybe, and this kind of a two-sided question. And then how can parents stop normalizing this, this pattern or dysfunction even?
So I think the first thing is parenting is not, it is not common. I'm going to use the word common or popular as a parent to admit that you're wrong. It's not very popular. So for most people, it's kind of like, yes, but I am the elder in the room. It's almost like we've been handed down through society the authority over the younger people, over your children. So if you are not conscious that whatever you're doing is hurting, can cause hurt or harm to a child or trauma to a child, you're just going to continue doing it. So it's not something that it's not popular as a parent to admit that you're wrong, to say sorry to your kids, to show your kids vulnerability. Some people have gotten there, but it's not a popular thing. It's not a worldwide thing. We normalize it for, oh yeah, if you're, even in the workspaces, if you've hurt somebody, apologize or mend fences. Be careful how you talk to people because you could cause hurt. And we are careful in professional spaces. But when it comes to the home, which is private and where people feel like they are the king of the castle, in their privacy of their home, it's almost like a feel or a need to control something. It feels an innate need as a human to control something. But then at the same time, there is that piece of fear. There's a fear that if I don't control this being, if I don't control this being, they're not going to turn out right. And I'm going to use quotes as in right, because right, again, is what is acceptable in society. So trying to mold that child for being acceptable in society and feeling the need that it's your responsibility to control them and mold them to be that.
Miriam, I'm going to interject. I don't disagree with you, but I'm going to take a step further. It's our own, as the parent, our own perceptions of what society, right? Because we all have our own filters, we all really have our own filters as well. I didn't think our conversation was going this way, but you said something earlier. I didn't want to interrupt, but how we have most places now, certainly in the Western world, we have protocols, procedures for how we treat others, like you said, in the workplace. I was thinking of even in the school system, certainly at least the younger grades, and I think it probably weakens a bit as you get older, like you have to say sorry to your friend if you hurt your friend, blah, blah, blah. But then in the home, we don't necessarily have that, and we want to control. So there's two factors. It's like we maybe have lost, or many people feel like they've lost control in other parts of life, and the only place they have control is home.
Absolutely.
And as someone who, ideologically feels like I don't want the government interjecting in my home, but at the same time, it's like, so we don't have, interference to some degree in the home but maybe we're doing these patterns that actually we could take stuff from outside and bring it into home to be better. Like it's a very complex dichotomy for sure, right?
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of times parenting is looked at as what you do to your kids or what you do with your kids, not with yourself. It's about the child, the parent dealing with the child and not dealing with themselves. And so that's where like a lot of my work comes in, to bring back the lens, to put the lens on yourself, you know, so that you can re-examine yourself and your actions and whatever you're doing with your child or to your child, whether, because parenting is not a one-way, it's a two-way, because you're receiving information from your child, information based on how they are responding, how they are acting. Are they hiding things from you, or are they being open with you? Are they safe around you that they can come and tell you their first crush or their first breakup? Or are they going to hide their relationships? You won't even know what they're doing, you know, when they'll be sneaking off and you don't know. So, you know, getting to that place of you're working on yourself, self-reflection, self-awareness, self-leadership, so that you can become the space that your child can thrive in. You're almost the garden in which your child, I love using metaphors. I look at the parent as a garden and the child is the plant. So if you're a garden that's depleted of resources, of nutrients, guess what the plant's going to be like?
Yeah, no, I love that. And you know, this whole doing your own work so you can be the best version of yourself to put out in the world, including to our children. I want to jump on that a little bit, but before we go there, I want to go back to your stories. If you know, could you share your personal that aha moment, that breaking point for yourself where you like said, this is the work I need to do, and that realization where trauma fits in. So I'd love for you to share that with the audience.
Yeah. Incidentally, for me, it was not a single moment. It was kind of a chipping away, a little bit of chipping away of things that happened, and there were a series of situations that happened, and incidentally, it started with my own awakening, and my own awakening happened when I started my doctoral journey, classes journey, and I took a class with a professor. He used to be a Buddhist monk, and he's Canadian, but he was born in Africa, and he grew up in China, and then he came back to Canada. He's Canadian, and the questions he was asking us in class were to get us to dig deep within ourselves. And I think I talk about that a bit in the book. One of the questions he asked us was, who are you? How are you? Where are you? And I answered it kind of really superficially because I was not evolved at all. And, you know, so I was talking about my name. I wasn't even thinking about what is in a name, where does it come from? You know, what does that mean when you're named, or when you name a thing and label it this? And, you know, where are you, you know, in life? Where are you located? And how are you located? How do you feel grounded? Whether you're whether you're in a place permanently, or is it a temporary space? I wasn't even thinking that deep. I was just thinking location, right? Physical location. So when we came back to class after we had submitted that work, he took us on this journey, and I was like, whoa, all right. So for me, it started with that self-discovery, self-awareness. Oh, whoa. So I actually did go back, and I thought, and when I started thinking about how I am, I started going back into, and it stayed with me. It stayed with me. I keep doing it. But I went back to, how am I? How did I come to be me? Am I the person I really want to be? And I dug deep, and I found that Even growing up as a child, I wanted to be a certain way, but I always run into the roadblock of adults. There's always an adult
Those
who kind
pesky
of,
adults always
yeah,
wrecking our lives, right?
who put a lid on your cup and you stayed inside. Every time you opened your mouth to speak, they put a lid on you. I remember being punished for talking a lot. And now I talk and talk for a living, which is funny, right? But I dug, so that's how I went back. And then I started paying attention to some of the things that had happened and how I had felt. Originally growing up, I had felt bad, but I couldn't put a name to what I was feeling because nobody was doing any work to dig anything. It was just how we lived. That's how society was. So during this time, as I dug deep and examined, and he introduced me to journaling, and I examined my past, I realized how wounded, how much I was bleeding and bleeding onto others, especially my children. I was unaware of the wounds I was walking around with. I felt like a leper by the time I was done. I don't think I'm done digging, but by the time I really decided to get on this journey, I just felt like a leper because I felt like I had wounds all over my body, and I was passing on this wounded self. I had already passed it on to some of my children because some were not yet born. And I looked at them, and thankfully, when growing up, I was a teen mom. So thankfully, my daughter was old enough. So I was having conversations with her. She lives in the United States. And so we had these conversations together, and I introduced her to a friend of mine who was a coach. And we were able to have these conversations together, and we were like, oh my God, like, look at us. Look at us. How do we start kind of putting salve on these wounds and cleaning them up and ensuring that whatever has spilled out can be cleansed because, it's spilled out, and whatever is still in there is dealt with. So it was a journey of self-discovery and working alongside. And also, interestingly, that was the same time when YouTube had just started. YouTube was fresh, Amazon was fresh. And on YouTube, one of the first people I was listening to, two people I was listening to were Tony Robbins. And I was like, what is this guy even talking about? He was talking about things. I'm like, what is this? And Lisa Nichols and her story. I don't know whether you know about her story. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. So I kind of started getting language for what was happening or what had happened to me. But yeah, it evolved over a period. It was so bad that I got to a place where I didn't even want to complete my doctorate because I felt that I had started it for the wrong reasons and I didn't want to continue. Because I needed to get a different reason for doing it and completing it and just get it done or just leave it alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Miriam, you brought up your daughter, and obviously your stories in the book. What's maybe just one or maybe two like major differences of how you raised your older daughter to your younger kids because of the work you've done yourself? I know you kind of talk about it in the book, but I'd love for you to share like one or two nuggets for the audience.
I don't think I am done raising her. We talk every day, and so that helps. So we still do the work. But when she was younger, a situation, it makes me want to cry right now. I remember when I hope I can hold myself through this, but I remember when she was supposed to go into grade 1 from kindergarten. And in Uganda, they do interviews to get into the school at grade 1. And at that time, she couldn't, I don't know whether it was counting or alphabet, but I think both. She was what, 4, right? And so she was going for this interview, and I needed her to ace it because she really needed to get into this school. And I remember taking her through these drills to learn things in like a week, because we only had a week. She needed to get it in a week. Oh my goodness. It was so hard because I was trying to get her to learn this stuff. I think it was 1 up to 10, and like the ABCs are like, and I was just going at her so badly. She eventually got in, and she got into the school. I don't think they asked her what I asked her to do, but and now I look at my 16-year-old and I'm like, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? What can we do? And that, when I started on this journey, I had a little one. That's probably, yeah, I had a little one. She came here when she was 2. And so I had opportunities to practice on her because I didn't have the older ones with me. I had a chance to practice on her, my new ways of looking at life. And I wasn't looking at it as parenting. It was just what had happened to me, and I didn't want to do it to her. So I paid attention to when she cried, why she cried, and I would ask her, how can I be better? How can I do this? And little as she was able to tell me, how to support her. So with that, like my last 2 versus my first 2, I was really hard on my first 2. And I am really not lighter. They say I'm lighter on them, but I think I'm more evolved, and I'm aware of how my actions can cause harm now.
So what I'm hearing you say is more, for the first 2, it's more of an authoritarian top-down type of thing. And now it's more of and you've done the work, so it's more of a awareness of yourself and the relationship, and more of a collaborative. And like, you didn't say any of those words; those are my words. But like, if that's my interpretation, would that be fair?
It is. It is fair.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you have, I mentioned it in the intro, you have your S.A.C.R.E.D, S-A.C.R.E.D communication method that you work on with your clients. That sounds like an acronym. So what is the S.A.C.R.E.D communication method?
Yeah, sacred, the word comes from the way I look at relationships now. I look at relationships as sacred. It's a gift. Any relationship with anyone is a gift. And so this sacred communication method can be used for any relationship, because you've been gifted this time with a person to connect with them, communicate with them, be with them. So when it comes to parenting, I look at the S.A.C.R.E.D communication method, and the S is the self-leadership. So, thinking about yourself as you communicate. Who am I before do I see the power dynamics that may be in place? How can I mitigate those so that I'm not in a controlling state? I am more in a collaborative state. So that self-leadership and self-awareness is the S. Then the A is the attuned listening. So it's not just listening because someone's talking to you, but listening for, if you're talking, say, to a child, is there pain? What are they trying to say that is not in the words? So just being attuned to how you hear the other person or the child communicating with you. Because if you don't hear what they're actually communicating, you're going to provide them with what they don't need. And that's not what you're going for. Then C is the courageous expression. So are you able to express yourself to this person with clarity and integrity? So after you've listened, how are you able to communicate back to them? Then there's relational repair when rupture happens. So in case of issues, how do you repair the relationship? So thinking about that these, ruptures do happen. We can't rule that out. So, but how do you respond when you've hurt your child unintentionally, or when you recognize that your child is hurt? How do you repair that? Because we can't say we are pure and, it doesn't happen. It does happen. We get upset and sometimes we yell, and you realize, yelled a little too loud, and your child is sad for the rest of the evening. Am I going to let them sit in a corner really sad that mommy did this? So how do you repair that? Then the emotional visibility. And this is where, like, I grew up without seeing my parents being emotional. The only time where they were emotional was when they were angry at me or if somebody passed, but that was it. I never saw their vulnerability. And I think it's very important for children to see our vulnerability, because it makes us more human. And also when they are going through things, it's easier for them to come to us because they know and see that they've seen us being sad, right? So it's easy to come to us. But if we portray this piece of, the stoic, non-sad person, it's kind of doesn't go down very well. And then the D is for the devotion to building a legacy. And I think it's very important to think about your legacy as a parent that you passed down to your children. So whatever you're doing, even through your communication, through your connection, through that anytime you're spending with them, you're thinking, you're knowing that you're actually passing on a legacy. Whatever they're going to be in future is because of you. So
I love all those. I want to pick up on just that last one before we move on. I think when many people think about legacy, they're talking about maybe their family name or wealth creation, what they're going to pass on to the next generation, et cetera, et cetera. But no one really thinks about helping their kids become the person who is a great member of society, whatever that emotional regulation piece. No one ever talks about legacy in that sense, not that I've come across anyway. So I love that that's part of the S.A.C.R.E.D Communication Method here. Now, Miriam, as we slowly come to a close here, I do want to ask you one of my standard questions I ask all guests. So again, this is, I'm all about health, but this podcast is not exclusive about health, but I love to ask my guests, like, what is, your morning routine, or what's a non-negotiable for your health and, both physical and mental health that, you have to do every day?
For morning routine, my morning routine is I wake up at 4 a.m. and after 4 a.m., usually I will try to get in some journaling, some reading, or reading or listening to a podcast, a class, something. Listen to something to work with through the day. And if I don't have a class pending, if I don't have a podcast that I'm really wanting to listen to at that time, I do have some apps that will have, like one of my favorite apps is Pep Talk. I love listening to Pep Talk in the background with that. Sometimes I will put on my speaker with Pep Talk. Other than that, one of the things I really, really try to do is to protect my mental space. I try not to be angry with people because I want to protect my mental space. If I have to go to a place or hang out with people who I know are going to cause stress for my mental health, I may say no, and I don't show up. I try to protect my mental health because for me that is huge. Because if I am not healthy mentally, I cannot be present for my kids. I cannot be present at my work. I cannot be present around my husband. So I try as much as possible to protect that. And it's not perfect, but I'm very aware of it. I am very aware of conversations that don't lead to growth, that don't lead anywhere. I don't have patience and time for those.
I love all those. Thank you for sharing. And I have not heard of Pep Talk, so I'm gonna have to check that out. And maybe we'll have a link to Pep Talk in the show notes, as well as we'll have all of Miriam's links as well. You can connect with her and all that sort of thing, which I think leads me to my next thing I wanted to talk about is you have a gift for the listeners. So I'd love for you to like share, very briefly, what is that gift for the listeners? And again, we'll have that link for the gift and all of Miriam's links in the show notes.
So one of the things I really love is I love technology. I love playing around with technology, all sorts of. I'm one of those early grabbers when it comes to technology. And one of the things that really fascinates me right now is AI and chatbots. And I also find that in the field of parenting, sometimes things are happening in the moment for parents, and like my clients may not have time to reach me right away, and other parents may not have a coach to go to right away, or anyone to reach out to right away. And sometimes it hurts my heart when I see people throwing a post on social media that says, "Oh, my child is doing this. Does anyone have advice?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" Like you're just going to get everyone and anyone to give you what has been passed down to them. They're just going to pass it down to you. But at the end of the day, you're just going to do what you know to do because of what has been passed down to you. So I've created different chatbots, a ton of chatbots, to support parents at different stages of their journeys. And one of the chatbots I've developed is a baby Todd who works with parents, new parents or parents to be, up to parents with toddlers, to help them through that time when I don't know what to do with my child, or my child is doing this right now. Is it normal for a 6-month-old to do this? Things like that. Or how do I respond? Or I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I need something to help me because I feel overwhelmed. I need help. Basically, it's for the cry for help. So that's a free one. Another free one is for teens, parenting tactics. And this is a very simple one for a lot of parents with teenagers and teenagers struggle with communications with teens. And so this particular one, parenting tactics, helps you to figure out, how do I talk to my teen about this? How do I address screen time? My 16-year-old calls it screenager, the screenagers, right? How do I talk
there's actually a movie called Screenager. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but anyway, I digress.
I'm unaware, but yeah, she says, yeah, we are all screenagers right now. But anyway, yeah, so it's for the parents to navigate those communication processes with their teens.
Well, I'll just say this, like I wish, I mean, we're still going through it, so I'm going to definitely check out the one for the teens, because I have preteen and a teen, and certainly wish there was more resources besides, not there's anything wrong with it, but like relying on, my wife and I, our parents for guidance. Again, we're just getting that inherited patterning or advice that then came from their parents, and like that. And again, we mishmatch, and we had different experiences growing up a little bit, both me and my wife, so we have a blend already. But I wish there was a resource like that. So definitely for the listener, like, if you're anywhere in that range from newborn to teenagers, there's all these chatbots, and like Marion mentioned, a number of them are free for you to test out, so definitely check them out. And again, we'll have the links in the show notes, and please do check them out.
And I've programmed them in such a way that it's actually me talking to you. So it's not like random Google advice out there. It is me. It uses specific frameworks to do with relational intelligence, frameworks to do with negotiation. How do you negotiate with your teen, for example? And it's not just random. And you can print off some. Let's say you need to have a contract with your teen. It can help you with wording the contract. So it's technically me supporting you through AI.
Yeah, Miriam, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's too many people, I think, who quite easily are relying on just general, Dr. Google or Dr. ChatGPT, obviously it's a bot, like as you said, but this is, someone who has their doctorate in these things and has developed frameworks. So it's going to be a very good resource. So definitely check that out, everyone. And also, while I'm at it, great book as well. Learn about Miriam's story. Maybe you see something in it for yourself. I was saying to Miriam before we hit the record button, even though she grew up in Uganda, I know people who've grown up in other places in the African continent. My family, half my family, East Indian. We see the same patterns in all different, Asian countries. So this is affecting a lot of people. So definitely, pick up the book on Amazon and wherever you get books. Miriam, as we come to a close, are there any last, words of wisdom or golden nuggets you'd like to leave the audience with?
I don't know if it's golden, but my advice to people, to your listeners, is don't sit around and wait for things to go bad, because that is the mistake that many parents do. They think everything is going well until it doesn't. So the more prepared you are, the more equipped you are, the better off you are. So if you've not really done your own work, your self-work, you need to get on it. And you need to get on the work. If you have children, you need to get on the work of trying to understand children and understand them from their perspective, not from your perspective or your own history. They're experiencing the world today very differently than we did, I don't know, 4 decades ago, right? 5 decades ago. It's a very different world today. And so trying to understand your child from their perspective is key, but don't wait for things to go wrong or bad for you to equip yourself. Parenting has been underlooked, undermined, and people don't even think that you need to have parenting support, but get the support now before things go down the drain. Because when you're in crisis mode, it is very hard to get the right advice. Everyone has advice for someone in crisis mode, but is it the right advice for you? It might not be. Is it the right advice for your child? It might not be. So if you don't do your work, you're going to end up bleeding on your children. You're going to end up handing down your wounds to your children, like hand-me-downs. You just keep passing it on, and guess what? Your grandkids are going to be moving with your wounds. Your great-grandkids are going to be moving with your wounds. Is that what you want to be your legacy?
Great advice. I love that. Yeah, you got to do your own work there, people. I've been saying that for a long time. Miriam, thank you for being on the show. I think you brought a lot of color, a little bit of a different topic, very complimentary to what I'm always talking about, but a little bit different topic from any other guests we've had. So I really appreciate you being on the Deepak Saini show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to throw it to J23, who's going to guide us out with some music. Don't forget to check out like all Miriam's links I'll have in the show notes, but also our show sponsor as well. Don't forget to check out their links. Save some dollars there on some very awesome products. So again, thank you, Miriam, and everyone. Thanks again for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Remember, exceptional results for the exceptional you. Until next time. This episode is brought to you by Optimizers Magnesium Breakthrough. This is a product I've been using and our family's been using for 4 years already. What I love about it, it has 7 different forms of magnesium in it, all the forms that your body needs for all 400 processes that your body needs magnesium for. Most magnesium supplements have 1 form and usually a crummy form of magnesium. This has all 7 forms that your body needs. So click the link and get at least 10% off. Sometimes there's specials and you even get more. So check out Optimizers Magnesium Breakthrough.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company